Well, it feels like it, doesn't it, really? And I mean, seriously, what is wrong with your Premier over there? Everybody else comes around the table and says, yeah, look, I think we can open by Christmas. And the Premier said, oh, no, let's just keep Western Australia isolated geographically and politically for a bit longer. This is awful, Caroline.
It really is, but it's been so politically convenient for this government and it's worked so far. So they're just going to keep going along with it for as long as possible. Look, when the WA budget was released, they had the same assumption as the federal budget, that the border wouldn't open until 1 April next year. But look, I actually don't really know what he's going to do yet. I think, he could still be Santa Claus and let us open,
for Christmas
and then pat himself on the back. But, remember the High Court challenge, the Palmer High Court challenge is in November. So if there's any decision that's brought down before the end of the year, we have a retiring High Court judge who has to retire. I think it's as the 2nd of December. So if he sits in this matter, then the judgment will have to be down by then. But essentially, if that judgment comes down in favour of Clive Palmer, then the WA government get political absolution for any coronavirus case that happens after that time. So they're actually playing it very well.
OK, all right, playing it well. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, Lisa, that Western Australia's not the only one. There's all this secrecy around the numbers of how coronavirus impacts on this decision. What the medical advice is not clear in Western Australia, certainly not clear in Melbourne. You've got a hugely important Queensland businessman, Screw Turner, who's trying to find out why the Queensland borders are shut. He runs the Flight Centre organisation. I can understand why. This secrecy is not a good look.
No, and it's happening right across the country, whether we're talking about WA. And look, there are certainly people in WA who would like to be able to go out and visit family around Christmas time, and a lot of Australians who would like to get into WA to visit family at Christmas. So they'll be shaking their head as to why this decision is being made to keep it closed and not fall in line with, hopefully, the rest of the country. And we will hopefully see what the Prime Minister wants, which is Australia and our borders opened in time for Christmas, because, hey, the coronavirus is just suddenly going to be something we can suddenly live with come the 24th of December, apparently. But and here in Queensland, you're absolutely right. The boss of Flight Centre has gone out. He's put in a right to information through the Queensland government back in June to try to find out, to force their hand to show exactly what's the health advice that they're basing these decisions on. And do you think here we are in October that he has got his hands on that information yet? No, they say the brief that he asked for was far too big, so then he had to go back and try to reduce it. And now, because it's so much work, they're now saying very conveniently that it's not going to be available now until about the 30th of October, which, day out from the election here. So that could be a mighty big bombshell that Palaszczuk doesn't want out in the public arena. So, you've got a Flight Centre boss there who's looking at his business and the tourism sector absolutely decimated in this state and around the country. Good on him for taking up the fight.
Well, I think so, but I mean, Bronwyn Bishop, this is the kind of point of talking to Daniel Wild. I mean, there's a complete absence of questioning of the executive in the Queensland Parliament. The way the committee system works doesn't actually allow the kind of real rigour that you, when you were in the Senate representing New South Wales, and you as a member of the House of Representatives, always managed to perfect this questioning of the executive. And you and I have been a member of the executive. We know we're accountable to the Parliament. In Queensland, it's a bit of a giggle.
Well, unfortunately, Gary, it's a bit of a giggle all around the country, isn't it? I mean, Victoria has an upper house. It's not much use down there. But, I mean, what has become absolutely apparent is that this whole issue of closing borders is a political issue. It's got nothing to do with health at all. And it's what we're seeing is that I said right at the beginning of this pandemic that China had not only exported virus, it had also exported fear. And I watch in utter amazement as people surrender their freedom. I can't believe it. But I saw a glimmer of hope, I think, in Western Australia. And Caroline, you might have seen this poll where I think there was a majority voted in favour of having smart borders, not closed borders. And that gives me an inkling that there is some hope. And in Melbourne, we've seen rather fierce demonstrations for people who are just fed up. And at least somebody is complaining about being turned into a slave. I mean, the definition is a slave, you've got a roof over your head, you've got something to eat, they'll clothe you and enable you to be useful to the state, and when you know you're longer useful, they'll get rid of you. Why are people prepared to enslave themselves? I do not get it. So I'm encouraged when I start to see these signs, and when I hear some of the people out of North Queensland starting to voice their point of view about how dreadful it is. And, of course, those regional seats are going to be so important in the coming election in Queensland. But we saw New Zealand, we saw the Northern Territory, we saw the debate with Trump and Biden, where it's all talking about the virus. It is just squashed good, sensible debate on things that really matter.